You meet someone, and within 2 weeks you've told them things you've never said out loud to anyone. Not because you're impulsive, because something in you recognized something in them, and the recognition felt more urgent than caution. Then, without warning, they go quiet. Not busy quiet, gone quiet. And you spend the next 6 months trying to figure out what happened to a connection that felt, days earlier, like it had always existed. If you've lived any piece of that, you've probably already gone looking for a name for it. And what you likely found was a list. Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3, all the way to reunion, presented like a staircase you climb once, and you're done. I want to be straight with you before we go any further. It doesn't work like a staircase. It works more like a spiral staircase inside a building that's still being renovated. You go up, you circle back past the same floor you thought you'd left, and sometimes you're on floor 4 and floor 2 at the same time in different rooms of your life. People spend years, sometimes decades, moving back and forth between the same 2 or 3 stages before anything resembling stability shows up. So if you're partway through this and thinking, I already did that stage, why am I back there again? You're not doing it wrong. That's what the process actually looks like. There are 6 stages. I'm going to walk you through all 6, in order, with the actual signs that show up in each one. Not vague spiritual language, but the specific things people report experiencing, down to the number sequences and the physical sensations. Some of what's coming in stage 4 and 5 is the part almost nobody explains clearly, so stay through to the end, because the stages that hurt the most are also the ones people misread the worst. Stage 1, the preparation. This one happens before you've even met the person. It's the yearning phase, and it's stranger than wanting a relationship. People describe recurring dreams of a faceless figure, months or sometimes years before meeting anyone who matches. They describe a sense, not a thought, a sense that someone is coming. Not hope, not wishful thinking. Something closer to a certainty they can't explain and don't try to. Alongside that, life tends to fall apart in ways that don't make sense at the time. A stable job gets walked away from with no backup plan. A long relationship ends abruptly, sometimes with no clear villain in the story. A move happens on a hunch. Looking back, people call this the purge. Everything non-essential getting stripped away, whether they wanted it stripped or not, leaving them raw and strangely open right before the meeting happens. It rarely feels spiritual while it's happening. It usually just feels like your life is falling apart for no reason. The reason tends to show up later. This is also when the number sequences start. 1111 on the clock, twice a day, for weeks. 222 on a receipt you weren't looking at. 555 on a license plate, 3 days running, in 3 different cars. Synchronicities, in this world, just means noticing meaningful, repeated coincidences, and in stage 1, they function like a countdown you don't know you're on. Most people don't clock it as significant until stage 2 happens, and they look back and realize the numbers had already started. Stage 2, the meeting, or the awakening. Then the person arrives, and what happens next is not a slow build, it's immediate. Eye contact that lands like vertigo. A physical sensation. People describe it as a shockwave down the spine, or the strange, specific feeling of home, aimed at a total stranger they met 20 minutes ago. Within hours, sometimes within the first conversation, the deepest, most guarded material comes out. The thing you've never told anyone. You tell them, and it doesn't feel like oversharing. It feels inevitable, like the conversation was always going to end up there. This is also where people start reporting something stranger, feeling the other person's anxiety spike from across town, a wave of dread or unease with no source, then getting a text an hour later, confirming that's the exact moment something happened on their end. The whole thing runs on a kind of euphoria the community calls the bubble soul phase, a stretch of days or weeks where the two of you feel sealed off from the rest of the world, immune to it, high on each other, in a way that doesn't resemble any relationship you've had before. Friends notice you're different. You barely notice them noticing. It feels, at the time, like the destination. It isn't. It's the ignition. Here's the piece worth sitting with before we move forward. Nothing about stages 1 and 2 is inherently bad or dangerous. Vivid dreams, uncanny timing, a conversation that goes deeper than it should this early. None of that means you've found your twin flame, and none of it means you haven't. It means something got activated. What happens with that activation is the entire rest of this video, and it starts turning hard in the very next stage. The bubble doesn't get punctured from the outside. It cracks from within. Somewhere between a few weeks and a few months in, the same two people who couldn't stop talking start finding reasons to fight about nothing. A tone of voice, a late reply, something trivial enough that afterward neither of you can quite explain why it escalated the way it did. And it's not that one of you is being difficult. It's that the intimacy from stage 2 has gotten too close, too fast, and something underneath is starting to surface that neither of you was ready to look at. Here's the part worth actually understanding, because it explains almost everything that happens next. You start accusing the other person of flaws that are, uncomfortably, your own. If you've ever been furious at someone for being distant while you were the one pulling away first, that's this. It's called projection, and in plain terms, it just means the stuff you haven't dealt with in yourself gets aimed at the person standing closest to you. It feels, in the moment, completely convincing. That's what makes it hard to catch while it's happening. At the same time, one of you, often the one who felt safest and most in control up to this point, starts to feel something closer to terror. Not because they've stopped caring, because they've started caring too much, faster than they know how to handle, and the nervous system reads that intensity as danger, so they pull back, cancel plans, go quiet mid-conversation, not out of coldness, out of self-preservation they can't yet name, and honestly probably can't explain to you even if you asked directly. That fear response is the hinge. It's what tips stage 3 into stage 4. Stage 4. The runner and the chaser. This is the stage almost everyone watching this has either lived through or is living through right now, and it's the one surrounded by the most bad information. One day, without a warning that makes sense in hindsight, the person who felt terrified in stage 3 disappears. Not a slow fade, a cutoff, blocked number, deleted accounts, no explanation, or one so thin it doesn't hold up. This person is what the community calls the runner, and the person left behind, reeling, checking to see if their texts have been read, rereading the last conversation for a clue they missed, is the chaser. I want to correct something the algorithm keeps feeding people, because it changes how you survive this stage. The runner is not unaffected. Surface content loves to paint them as cold, or spiritually asleep, or simply done. What's actually happening, in case after case, is a person who feels the intensity of the connection just as strongly as the chaser does, and has no idea what to do with it. Running isn't indifference. It's panic wearing the costume of indifference. Meanwhile, the chaser goes through something the body experiences as genuinely physical. A real ache in the chest, insomnia that doesn't respond to being tired, an appetite that disappears for weeks, so eating starts to feel like a chore instead of something the body wants. This isn't dramatics. It's closer to a withdrawal, the same neurological pattern you'd see in any sudden loss of a source of intense reward. The dopamine and oxytocin that flooded stage 2 don't just switch off because the person did. Your body was getting something real out of that connection, and now it's not. and it reacts the way a body reacts to any sudden absence of a substance it got used to. That's worth pausing on, because it's the part the community tends to romanticize instead of naming clearly. If what you're feeling is the agony of someone alternating between intense affection and total withdrawal, over and over, with no accountability and no actual change in the pattern, that specific shape has a name, and it's not spiritual purging. It's a trauma bond. The high-low cycle is what keeps a nervous system hooked, whether the other person is your twin flame or not. Real separation from someone who got scared and ran can still hurt like this. But if the cycle keeps repeating on the other person's terms, with no honesty and no growth, calling it ascension doesn't change what it actually is. Two more things tend to happen inside this stage that catch people off guard. First, the runner often moves quickly into a new relationship, one that's calm, low stakes, and safe, specifically because it's the opposite of what just terrified them. The community calls this a karmic partner, and its whole function is to prove, mostly to the runner themselves, that they've moved on. Second, if you're the chaser, the synchronicities don't stop. You'll keep seeing their name, their birthday, their car, everywhere, and it will feel like the universe confirming the connection is still alive. It might be, but it's also exactly the kind of signal that keeps someone checking a phone that isn't going to light up. If you're in this stage right now, here's the distinction that matters more than anything else in this video. There's a real difference between someone running because intimacy scared them and someone who is simply, repeatedly, showing you disrespect, contempt, or cruelty and calling it a test. A person can be avoidant and still be safe. A person who gaslights you or cycles hot and cold on purpose to keep you destabilized is not mirroring your wounds back to you. They're causing new ones. If what you're calling separation actually involves fear for your safety or a pattern of control, that's not a stage. That's a situation you leave, full stop, regardless of what the connection might otherwise be. Stage 5. The surrender. At some point, the chaser gets tired in a way that's different from the exhaustion before it. Not defeated, just done. Done checking, done analyzing, done needing an answer today. Community language calls this dropping the rope. It's usually not dramatic. It's a Tuesday. You look at yourself and realize you've spent a year organizing your life around someone who isn't in the room. Here's what people get wrong about this stage, and it matters. Surrender is not giving up on the person. It's not gritting your teeth into fake detachment, and it's definitely not a strategy to trick them into coming back. If you're doing it as a strategy, you haven't actually done it yet. Real surrender means you stop needing to control what happens next. You still care. You just stop building your peace around their behavior. What replaces the obsession is usually something concrete. The energy that went into refreshing a phone goes into a body, a project, a friendship that's been neglected for a year. People take up things with their hands. Pottery, training for something physical, work they'd shelved. Not as a distraction, as a redirection of the same intensity toward a life that's actually present. This is also, practically speaking, where the checking has to stop. Not just the texting, but the tarot pulls, the psychic readings, the daily search for a sign. Every one of those keeps the nervous system locked onto the same question. Grounding the body instead, through something as basic as a hard workout or a cold shower when the urge to check hits, does more for this stage than another reading ever will. The marker that you've arrived here isn't a feeling of relief when they text. It's the opposite. Thinking of them and feeling something closer to warmth with no ache underneath it. Peace that doesn't depend on their next move. Some people report the synchronicities quiet down around this point too, which tracks. Once your nervous system stops running on high alert for a signal, there's less reason for your brain to keep flagging every 1111 as evidence. Stage 6. Harmonization. This is the stage everyone thinks is the finish line, and I want to complicate that a little, because it isn't quite that simple. It often starts small. A low-stakes message after months or years of nothing. This song reminded me of you, something with no pressure attached, sent to test whether the door is even open. If you've done the work in stage 5, you'll notice something different in how you respond. No spiraling over what it means. No rewriting your whole day around it. Just a calm reply, in your own time, without needing to decode the subtext for hours first. From there, if it's real, the two of you find you can talk about what happened without either person going defensive or shutting down. That's the actual marker of harmonization. Not fireworks, but the ability to sit in a hard conversation without either of you flinching. Sometimes the practical circumstances start lining up on their own too. A job change, a move, something that makes ordinary life together possible without either of you forcing it. One thing worth saying plainly, reunion is not where the work ends. It's where it gets tested at closer range. If either person only performed their healing during separation, instead of actually doing it, being back in close contact will surface that fast, and the whole thing can slide back into stage 3 territory. So if you get here, don't treat it as a prize you've won. Treat it as the next room. And one boundary point that has nothing to do with which stage you're in. If someone has told you clearly that they want no contact, they're just running from their light, is not a reason to keep texting, showing up, or holding space they didn't ask you to hold. A stated no is real in the physical world, no matter what you believe is happening energetically. Respecting it isn't giving up on a connection. It's the minimum requirement for it to ever be safe. If you're trying to figure out which of these 6 stages you're actually in right now, because it's genuinely hard to tell from the inside whether you're still in crisis or already deep into separation, that's exactly what the Journey Type quiz in the Twin Flame Compass is built to help you map out, instead of guessing off a YouTube comment section. Wherever you are in this, the yearning before it started, the ache of someone who went quiet, or the strange calm of finally not needing them to come back, none of it is wasted time. Every stage, even the ones that feel like punishment, is doing something to the person you're becoming, with or without them. That part isn't a guess. That part you can actually watch happen, one Tuesday at a time.